All right, let's dive into a fascinating historical puzzle. For centuries, the heart of Muslim power in India was right around Delhi and Agra. But here's the strange part. That area stayed overwhelmingly Hindu. So how did Bengal, a place way out on the very edge of the empire, become one of the largest Muslim regions on the entire planet? Well, the answer is definitely not what you'd think. And that's the central mystery, isn't it? You'd think the places closest to the seat of power would be the ones to change the most. But in India, the exact opposite happened. The story of how Bengal transformed isn't some simple tale of conquest. Nope, it's something way more complex and, frankly, a lot more interesting. So, who were the main drivers of this incredible change? They weren't generals leading armies or kings issuing decrees. They were charismatic holy men wandering from one village to the next. These figures were called Pirs. Think of them as wandering Sufi mystics, these spiritual guides who moved through the remote countryside of Bengal. And they weren't carrying swords, they were carrying a message that was about to connect deeply with the local people. So what was their secret? Well, the Pirs' approach was just incredibly adaptive. They didn't show up and demand that people throw away all their old traditions. Instead, they preached a message of universal brotherhood. They even integrated local gods and customs right into their teachings. You see, their goal was assimilation, not replacement. They offered people a direct line to God, no intermediaries needed. And this is the key right here. This wasn't about erasing a culture. It was about blending with it. The Pirs basically gave people a new spiritual lens to look at the world they already knew, and that made their message incredibly appealing. So now the question is, why were so many people ready for this new message in the first place? You see, this message from the Pirs didn't just land in a vacuum. It arrived in a society that was deeply fractured and, for a whole lot of people, really oppressive. Let's paint a picture here. On one side, you had Brahminical society with its rigid caste system, where your birth decided your entire life. Simple acts could get you totally ostracized. Widows faced a cruel existence. But on the other side, Islam, as the Pirs presented it, offered something radical: social equality, a way back into society, and a life of dignity for everyone. And there was one group in particular that was just desperate for an alternative. You see, Bengal used to be a major stronghold for Buddhism, but as Brahmanical Hinduism made a comeback, Buddhists started facing serious persecution. For them, Islam wasn't just some new faith, it was a refuge, it was an escape. You can really feel this in the local texts from that time. Get a load of this quote from a text called the Sunya Purana. It's describing how persecuted Buddhists saw the arrival of Muslims. They believed their own gods were taking on Muslim forms to come and save them. So the arrival of Muslims wasn't seen as a foreign conquest, but as divine intervention against their oppressors. Just wow. Okay, so when you have a shift this huge, a transformation this profound, it's no surprise that historians have been debating it for, well, over 100 years. And this brings us to the big question that historians have been wrestling with. What's the real story here? How do you explain millions of people changing their faith over generations? Was it just one thing, or a mix of a whole bunch of factors? Let's break down the main theories. Basically, it boils down to 4 main explanations. First, you've got the immigration theory, which suggests a huge wave of Muslims moved into Bengal. Then there's the famous sword theory, which argues it was all about forced conversion. After that, we have the patronage idea, that people converted for practical perks, like getting a government job. And finally, the theory we've been exploring, social liberation, the idea that people converted to escape an oppressive social system. So, where do scholars land on this today? What's the consensus? Well, look, while bits and pieces of all these theories probably played a role, some migration, some patronage, some conflict, the modern agreement is pretty clear. The single most powerful driver was social liberation. For the vast majority of people in Bengal, the pull of a more equal society was simply the most powerful force for change. So what does all of this leave us with? What's the end result of this very unique history? It's not a culture of conquest, but a culture of confluence. You know, like 2 great rivers merging to become one. And you can still see this incredible blended heritage all across Bengal today. I mean, you have shrines that are visited by both Hindus and Muslims. You have the same exact deity being worshipped with 2 different names, Satyanarayana and Satyapir. You'll find shared gods, people celebrating each other's festivals, and this amazing literary tradition where Hindu and Muslim themes just mix together freely. It's a living testament to a history of blending, not replacing.
And that, right there, is really the heart of it. The transformation of Bengal wasn't a story written by military might. It was a story about the power of an idea, a new narrative about equality and dignity carried by these wandering holy men that connected with millions of people who were just ready for a change. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest force in history isn't a sword, but a story.